Hi everyone, my name is Olarunsho Brimo and I work in the banking, finance and fintech practices in Alikwana Ibade, and with me is
Oluwaseun Joshua Ayanshola. I also work with Shell in the banking, finance and fintech practice groups. Today we will be talking about everything fintech.
well, maybe not everything fintech because it's so broad and I don't know if we can cover everything within the time we have, but yeah,
Absolutely.
like major things. Fintech,
Yes, like what fintechs are, what are the product offerings, and when people use these products, can they really technically distinguish one from the other? How they are regulated? What are the trends? What's the craze about fintech?
I mean, there's the mobile money operation,
Right.
There's the payment service providers. You have different examples, but I think to put it more into context, we should probably use
Example.
a live example.
Right.
Okay. So say for instance, I want to shop online. So I go to an online store. I select the product that I want and I want to check out. So do you want to run us through what goes on the back end?
Right.
Just so everybody understands.
Yeah, so I know that as a firm, we'll typically make sure that we try to use examples that people can relate with. So using the example you gave, right? So you're trying to purchase an item on Jumia, on an e-commerce website, right? Now, technically, that is going to be a card not present transaction.
Yeah.
Because there is no physical POS that you're slotting the card into. And anybody who's paid for anything online, all that is required are those about 12 digits or so. Yes,
12?
or 16 digits, yes. So that's, they ask you to put that, then the name on the card, and then the CV number,
CVV number.
Advice.
You can give me those details if you
To my dom. Anyway, so once you slot in the details, right? So let's tag everybody that is involved in that transaction.
Okay.
So you, Sheon, you're the customer, right? And then you own a GTB card. Now, in that example, GTB is the card issuer, right? But you notice that there are certain banks have Visa card, MasterCard, American Express, or whatnot. All of those examples are card schemes. So each bank then brands, their name on whatever card scheme. So you can find an Access Visa card. So that's a card scheme. So the card scheme is the one that gives you those unique numbers. And then they ask you for like the last 6 digits, which is what personalizes it. And then you have, so once you slot,
I mean, if you notice, like, even when you start putting in, like, maybe the first
it already suggests
that,
absolutely.
this is Visa, this
Correct.
is MasterCard. Yeah.
So 5 is usually like MasterCard, right? So that's a card scheme. So once you put it on the website, right? I like to think of gateway providers like Flutterwave and Paystack and the rest of them as online POS.
Okay.
So because they give you that portal, which a physical POS would have done, it would have identified the card and then sent the message to your issuer to confirm if the account is funded. So that service is what they provide online. So once you try to pay, it then takes you to another interface. So you slot in that information in there.
Okay.
So it confirms it. Now on the back end, there's another guy who is probably the most important guy.
That's the guy.
It's the switching company, right? The switching and processing company. So it's a switching company after the gateway service provider or the technically they are known as payment solution service providers, right? The PSSPs. Once they get that information, the switching company takes the information and then it runs it on the back. What it's doing essentially is, and remember when we did the presentation on Swift, we said that any payment has 3 components. So there is messaging, there is clearing, and then there is settlement. So the messaging is when you put your card information, you're sending a message saying that GTB, debit me 1,000 naira for this pair of slippers, right? And then confirm to Jumia that my account is funded, and that after they settle, the transaction, because they don't get the money immediately. That's the settlement part, right? So that they're going to get value. So then Jumia then gives you the item, even though it hasn't received money yet. But because the switching company has gone to your bank, the issuer, confirmed that your account is funded, and then sends that message back to the website, that's when it becomes successful. So that is the clearing, right? So once the clearing happens, so I've mentioned 3 people or 4 actually. The customer puts in their card, the interface is the gateway provider. The guy who confirms whether the account is funded is a switching company like InterSwitch, and then it sends it back. Now, guess what? The merchant is the person you're trying to buy something from, Jumia.
Okay.
Now, Jumia also has a bank, right? So Jumia's bank is then the acquirer. So that's a merchant acquirer. So once it is the acquirer that receives the money in the end. So once you then get the value, the transaction cycle in Nigeria is transaction plus 2 days. So at the end of 2 days, they basically just list out all the people who from GTB want to pay First Bank, which is Jumia's merchant acquirer, and then the payment is then made at the end of 2 days. So basically,
so
that's
while,
yes.
Sorry to cut you short. So while you are debited,
Yes.
they don't get the money immediately.
Immediately, but it is the recognition. It's the same thing for Swift, right? So when you send a Swift message, it is just recognizing that there's money in there, and then the actual debiting will happen later on. That's the settlement, and Pandari was explaining the other day that the neater way to do it is that somebody is also sending money from First Bank to GTB.
Yeah.
And GTB is sending. So they will not
they
actually
just net it.
exactly. So they just net it off. And then at the end, the settlement is really the balance. So if there's 2 billion transaction, 2 billion naira worth transaction from here, 4 billion worth from here, the guy who is owing just sends 2 billion exactly.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I think that just really clarifies like what the entire
Transaction cycle looks like.
is like.